Hi, this is Mashnu, and I would like to show you a game that I played at chess.com. It's a correspondence game, and I was playing white here, and I think it's an instructive game, actually for two reasons. One of them is that I receive so now and then questions about how to learn an opening. And as you know, I don't do many opening videos. There are other channels that are mainly doing videos about chess openings. I don't do that very much, but I can give you some general advice about this. When you want to learn an opening and you want to practice with it, well, playing correspondence games on internet is one of the ways of practicing and experimenting with a new opening. But it's very important to try to understand what the main ideas are in an opening, what the strategies are, and you can learn that either by reading a book about this opening. You can also learn it by simply replaying loads of grandmaster games played with this opening, this variation that you are investigating. Now in this game, it's a King's Indian, and my opponent followed the grandmaster theory for a long time, and at some point I decided to leave the theory and see how he would react if we would go off track. Now let me show you what happened. I played d4. He plays knight f6, c4, g6, so this means that he's going to play either a Grunfeld Indian or a King's Indian, so I played f3. This is one of the moves that I like against the Grunfeld. If he plays d5, then I take on d5, knight takes d5, and now e4, and we have this position where the knight on c3 is not there, so there is no exchange variation of the Grunfeld, so he needs to go to b6 now, this knight. And I'm not going to talk much about that because that's not what happened in the game. He didn't play d5, he played bishop to g7, and then we need to know something about the Semish variation of the King's Indian, because that's how we call it after e4. King's Indian defense, Semish variation is this f3 idea. There are different ways to play this, but one of the main plans for white is to go further with bishop e3, queen d2, knight c3, castle queenside, and then try to attack on the king side with h4, h5, having all his pieces directed this way. That's, let's say in a few sentences, what one of the main ideas is of this Semish variation. Of course, black will try to attack on the queen side then. Let's see. Castle king side, knight c3, d6. Perhaps you know it, perhaps not. The King's Indian defense from the point of view of black is a dark square defense, meaning that black is preparing e5 or c5 with this d6 move to have control over the dark squares in the center. This bishop on g7 can become an important weapon there. In the game, bishop e3, knight c6, knight g2 e2, a6, queen d2, very normal moves, and now rook to b8. So black now is telling white that if you want to attack me on the king side, I'm going to attack you on the queen side. I want to play b5. If you castle queen side, I'm going to advance my pawns and start an attack there. That's what black is telling with this move. I played h4 here, and my opponent stopped immediately my attack with the counter move h5. So what I did here is a move that is played a lot in grandmaster level, knight to c1. Looks a bit strange to bring this knight to c1. What's the idea? Well, first of all, the square e2 is being made available for the bishop, because the bishop then supports the advance of the g-pawn. The knight from c1 can later be brought to d3 and f2, where it also supports the advance of the g-pawn. And another idea, and that is what happened in the game, if black plays e5, let me show it to how it continued. e5, I advanced d5, knight to d4. Now I don't want this knight to be there, I want to trade it. So I go, well, you can play knight to e2 or knight to b3. Here I chose for knight to b3. Of course I'm threatening to win a pawn now on d4 and to trade this important knight on d4 of black. Now black took on b3, giving me a double pawn. On the other hand, if we look at the pieces now, the black pieces are quite restricted. His light pieces don't have really space to play. That's why black now advances c5, wanting to control some more squares, eventually preparing perhaps to play in the future b5 after preparation, controlling b4 with this pawn, so I don't play b4. Those are the ideas behind this c5, and opening also a diagonal here for the queen. I played bishop to e2 as planned, and now bishop d7. He is preparing to later, if it's possible, to advance the b pawn. Now here I went with my knight to d1. Where is this knight going? It's going to f2, where it supports g4. Another thing important is that this knight d1 also prepares an action on the queen side, b3, b4. If we look at the pawn structure, we can say that black's weakness will be the d6 pawn. If the position is opened, then the d6 pawn is going to be a weakness. So the idea of white to advance b4, and after trading here having more attack against d6, that's, let's say, the flexibility of this position. White can choose to try to attack on the king side. He can also choose for action on the queen side. Queen b6 was played now, and here I noticed that my opponent was following grandmaster games. This move queen b6 has been played many times, and here I thought, what if I don't make the most popular move now? What if I simply choose for a deviation that is not the best move? It's not a very bad move, but just to explore some other paths and see how my opponent reacts. Will he still understand the position, or will he lose track? What I did was I defended the b3 pawn with rook to a3. The most played move, let me return, is here to play b4. This is a very good move. It's a temporary sacrifice of a pawn, because after queen takes b4, he cannot take with the pawn because it's pinned. Follows queen takes queen, c takes b4, and now bishop d2 attacking the pawn on b4, and there is not really a good way to save this this pawn. If he advances, then rook to a3, and after that white can take, and you can see that now this pawn has become a weakness. So after this pawn falls on b3, perhaps even later prepare b4 and c5 is possible, things like that. So white's position is very flexible. You can choose with white here where to start an action. Let me return to the game now to show you what happened after rook a3. He played rook f to c8, anticipating the move b4. He thought that I would play b4 now, and then he would have a rook on this half open file. But I continue with knight to f2. Now the knight on f2 also has two ideas. Well, one of what I told you before, the idea of preparing this g4, but also the knight on f2 now can later go to d3 to support b4 from there. Of course, after defending the c4 pawn. He played now a bad move. Now it became clear that he didn't understand the position very well. It's difficult to find an active plan for black in this position. It's not easy. You really need to be patient in this position with black. And what my opponent did is he tried to trade queens, but after the trade of queens it's very easy to play this with white. He played queen to b4. I castled kingside and it took on g2. I took back. So we have a trade of queens. Now I have changed my plan. I'm not going for the kingside attack, but I'm going for the queenside. That's why I cancel kingside, because I'm preparing to advance before. I'm preparing to bring this rook eventually to a1 and play it more positionally. What to do here with black? It's not easy. I mean, if you want to play actively, you would want perhaps to play something like b5, but b5 is not possible right now, because then I take on a6. a6 falls, and also d6 is under attack, so you cannot take on c4 now. So this is difficult. How to prepare this? Well, playing rook to a8 perhaps would be the most, let's say, logical idea, to then later advance b5. Perhaps this is playable, I don't know. In the game he played king to h7, a very slow move, but with a thought, with an idea. What black wants to do is he wants to trade this dark square bishop for my dark square bishop. My bishop is more active than his bishop, so he wants to prepare bishop to h6 to trade these two bishops. I played b4 now, and he continued indeed with bishop to h6. Now I didn't want to trade these bishops, so what I did is bishop c3. After bishop to c3 we see already a possible tactic in the future. This knight on f6 is undefended, so if this bishop would not be on this diagonal, then f4 can be a very strong idea. But that is not something it's not a short-term plan, it's something for the future, but just to keep in mind. Now my opponent still wanted to trade the dark square bishop, so he played bishop to e3. Now I took on c5, and he must take with the bishop, because if he takes with the pawn then e5 follows. So if he takes here, then I take here, attacking the rook, attacking the rook on b8 and the knight on f6, undefended knight. So he needs to play bishop takes c5. I don't think rook takes c5 is playable. Now I continue with b4, gaining space, attacking the bishop. Now here comes the second mistake of black. He plays bishop to b6. I think that if black wants to keep this bishop on this diagonal, this long diagonal here, he needs to go to a7 and not to b6. Because of bishop to b6, he allows me now to advance the c pawn, winning time, winning a tempo here, attacking the bishop on b6. And I have the idea that my opponent didn't see this c5 move, that he thought that the c5 square was well defended by three pieces, the rook, the bishop and the pawn. But the thing is that this pawn is overloaded. He needs to defend e5, so he cannot be used as an attacking piece to take on c5. If pawn takes e5, bishop takes e5 again. So what here happened is bishop c7. That means that black is going back in space and allowing white to win space and to expand. We have now the position that I told you was already appearing, this tactical idea with the undefended knight on f6. I played f4, and he cannot take on f4 because of bishop takes f6. So what black did is he defended the e pawn with the rook to e8. Now I took on e5. He took back, giving me these two connected pass pawns. Now f6 is a weakness, f7 is a weakness. This rook on f1 is very well placed. So what would be ideal for white? Well, to bring this bishop to c4 where it attacks f7, so we can advance this pawn to d6 with double attack. Move this knight away from here so the rook attacks over the f-file. Black doesn't have any counter-attack, so white has a wonderful position here. I played knight to h3, attacking with my rook the knight on f6. It took the knight on h3, and now I took on f6. Now of course, now he must not move the bishop away, because then I take on f7. So he has king g7 attacking my rook, and I calmly played rook to f1. The bishop on h3 is unpre, so he must move. Bishop to d7 was played, and now I play d6. So I'm following the strategical plan of activating my pieces and using them to target the weakest point of black. Also with d6 I am blocking the defense of this pawn on e5. He played here bishop to d8, the only place to go for this bishop, and I played bishop to c4, threatening to take on f7. And well, here perhaps he should have played f6 or f5. That would give him some practical chances, but he played bishop f6, blocking the rook on f1. But this is actually asking for trouble, because this bishop, we can say, is also pinned now. I mean, he cannot move because then follows rook takes f7. So this gives me the idea of increasing the pressure against the bishop on f6. So my plan now is very simple: rook a2, rook f2, and then attacking these pieces on the f-file. So rook a2 played. My opponent played bishop to e6. I took the bishop and he took back with the rook, and here I played rook a to f2. And the pressure is so big now that it's impossible to hold for black. Actually, we are arriving now at the last move of the game. I have a tactical threat. I'm sure that many of you see it. I'm threatening rook takes f6. After rook takes f6, then bishop takes e5, and the rook on f6 is pinned. And that's actually what happened in the game. He played rook to f8, and I took on f6, and here he resigned because of rook takes f6, bishop takes e5, and then after that I take the rook, and I'm a piece up, and I have this connected pass pawns that will start marching. Alright, that's the game that I wanted to show you, and I hope that by commenting this game you got some ideas about how to play this line against the King's Indian, and about, well, how to use the strategical characteristics of the position to find a plan, like in this case the open f-file, the diagonals for the bishops. Yeah, well, I hope you can use this knowledge in your own games. And if you would like to comment, then write a comment. If you like the video, then click on the like button. And if you want to share this video on Google Plus or Facebook or wherever, just go ahead. I mean, the more people watch my videos, the happier I am, because more people will improve and love this beautiful game of chess. Alright, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.